In this phase, we're going to be adding buttons to our screen that people on touch-enabled devices can use to play the game. If we create a game and it can only be used with a keyboard and a mouse, then we're shutting out a large percentage of our potential audience. So we're going to add touch controls using everything we've learned. Make sure you have your USB flash drive connected and that you have the step-by-step project guide close by. We're going to create a global variable which tracks whether the user is playing on a touch-enabled device, a tablet, a phone, whatever. We're going to create a layer that is only shown when someone is on a touch-enabled device. We're going to create some of the object types we need, and we're going to add events and actions that allow us to control the game from a touch-enabled device. So let's get started. In order to support touch controls, I need to add the special touch object type to my project. This is similar to what we did with the keyboard, the mouse, and audio. On object types, right-click, insert, new object. And under input, choose touch. Now we'll be able to use this special touch object type in Construct2's event system. What we want to do is go to the Get Ready event sheet. The Get Ready event sheet is the event sheet that goes with the Get Ready layout. Remember, the Get Ready layout is the first layout of the game. What I want to do is perform device detection. At the very beginning of the game, on this layout, I want to detect, are you using a keyboard, a mouse, or some touch-enabled device, a tablet, phone? And if I know that information, then I can code things appropriately. I can support touch controls. I can support you using a keyboard or mouse. So let's create a global variable which stores the results of our device detection. Right-click, add global variable, call it is touch device. This is going to be a number. For global variables, I can only use numbers and text. So I'm going to be making this sort of like a Boolean, but I'm using 0 for false, 1 for true. For the meaningful description, whether user is playing on a touch-enabled device. And since there's no Booleans, 0 will equal false, and 1 will equal true. It's a very common practice. So once we've figured out whether you're using a touch device or not, we're going to set this variable and we'll be referring to it throughout the game. Press OK. The mechanism we're using to detect whether you have a touch device is pretty straightforward. We're going to add an event that uses this touch object type we just added to the project. On any touch start, we are going to set the value of the isTouchDevice global variable. By default, isTouchDevice is false or 0. If we detected any touch of the screen, we're going to set the value of the isTouchDevice to 1, which in our case is true. Let's go ahead and drag this event block to be the second underneath the Get Ready event group. Once again, on the first layout of the game, we are going to be looking for anything that's a touch. If someone touches the screen in any way, we will set isTouchDevice to 1. And since this is a global variable, the rest of the game will be able to refer to it, to know whether the user's playing with a touch-enabled device. In order to support touch controls, we're going to have to modify some of our existing events. Up until now, we've only been supporting the keyboard and the mouse. For example, in the Get Ready event sheet, you'll see there's the event right here. On any key press of the keyboard or any click of the mouse, it starts the game by going to level 1. Well, we need to add an additional condition to support touch. Add another condition, touch, and on any touch start, we also want to start the game. So we're supporting the keyboard, the mouse, and the touch. On the Get Ready screen, one of those three things will start the game. Obviously, this also applies to the Game Over layout. So go to the Game Over event sheet, and we need to modify this event. Currently, we can only restart the game using the keyboard or the mouse. Let's add another condition to support touch on any touch start. Now we'll be able to restart the game using any of our supported input types. Those using a touch-enabled device, a tablet or a phone, they're going to need something to touch in order to move our player. So we're going to go back to level 1 and we're going to add our touch controls. The controls that are on the screen that someone with a touch-enabled device can press. To do that, we're going to add a new layer. This layer is going to be called Touch. It's going to be the topmost layer. And we're going to set some of the properties. This layer is special. We only want to show it if someone's on a touch-enabled device. So what we're going to do is we're going to hide it initially. So in the properties bar, where it says initial visibility, we're going to go to invisible. What this is going to do is it's going to hide the layer. If we detect that someone's on a touch-enabled device, then we're going to show it. This is also a layer that we want to have that non-scrolling effect. This is parallax 0, 0. That means these controls are always going to be in the same position, no matter where in the viewport the person playing your game is. We're going to be creating 3 controls on our screen: a left arrow, a right arrow, and an up arrow. Go to your project bar, and under object types, right-click, insert new object. We're going to be creating the left arrow control. It's a sprite. We're going to call it touch left. Crosshair appears. Click on the layout. We're going to be loading the touch left image. We're going to set its collision polygon by right-clicking, set to bounding box. And we're also going to set the origin point to 8080, which it looks like it is. I'm going to position this using the properties bar. But first, I'm going to make it half see-through. Even though these controls take up some of the screen, I want to be able to see behind them. I also want to position this exactly at 192/960. The bottom left corner. Let's do the same thing for the right arrow. Object types, insert new object, sprite. We're going to call this one touch right. It's also a sprite. Click. Same as before, but this one is the touch right button. Go to the set collision polygon, right click, set to bounding box. We want the largest possible area for the buttons. And make sure that the origin is 80/80 and close. Same thing here. In the properties bar, let's make it half see-through and let's position it exactly at 480/960. Right next to the left arrow, but at the bottom. One more to make. Our up button. Object type, insert new object type, sprite. Call this one touch up. Click on the layout, navigate to the image, which is touch up. Set collision polygon, set to bounding box. Origin should be 80/80. Just as before, let's make it half see-through. And we are going to position it at 17/28/960. All the way to the right. Let's go ahead and go to layers and lock our touch layer. So level 1 now has a touch layer with touch controls on it, and it's initially invisible. We want to determine when we should make this visible. If you go back to projects, start and end level event sheet, what we're going to do is at the start of any layout, if is touch device is true, if it's 1, then we are going to make the touch layer visible. This is how we're going to do this. Make sure that you're in the on start of layout event, in the start and end level event sheet, and we are going to add a sub event. That sub event is going to be of the system variety, and we're going to compare a variable. We are going to see whether is touch device is equal to 1. In other words, is touch device true? Is our user playing on a touch device? If they are, then we want to make the touch layer visible. Add action, system, under layers and layout, find set layer visible. And we want to make the touch layer visible. And done. At this point, I can actually test some of the code. What's really neat in Construct 2, if you go to the touch object type, you'll see that there's a property called use mouse input. And it says use mouse clicks as a single touch input, useful for testing. When use mouse input is equal to yes, it makes it so that the mouse acts like someone touching the screen. This makes it really easy to test your games, because otherwise you would need to have a tablet or a phone in order to test whether your touch events are working. So I'm going to see whether my code is working. I'm going to go to the Get Ready layout, and I'm going to run the game. The first time I run it, I want to use the keyboard. So I'm going to press the space bar. As you can see, the game shows up and there are no touch controls. However, if I use my mouse to start the game, because use mouse input is yes, it's going to treat my mouse like a touch device. So if I click, device detection occurred, it said I had a touch device and my controls are on the screen. This is in effect what this use mouse input allows you to do. It allows you to test your games. You get to use the mouse as if it was touching the screen. Before you publish your game, however, you want to set that to no. So we performed device detection on the first layout of the game and stored the results in the global variable. We created an invisible touch layer with 3 controls on it that we can show if the user playing our game is on a touch-enabled device. But if that user were to touch the left, right, or up touch controls, nothing would happen. That's because we need to code the Construct 2 event system to respond to the user touching the controls. We're going to go to the player event sheet, and these are going to be placed in the movement event group. Right now, the player is largely controlled just using the keyboard. We need to add events to control the player using touches. Click Add Event, and let's do our first one. Click Touch. Is touching object. This is the condition that we're going to be using to move the player. For example, if the touch right button is being touched, we want to simulate the player moving right. Add action, player, and this is under the platform behavior. Simulate control, control right. So let's take a closer look at this one. This is anytime someone touches the touch right control, we are going to simulate them moving right with the platform behavior. This is kind of like saying, act as if someone hit the right arrow. What about the other buttons? Add event, touch. What if someone was touching the left touch control? Very similar. Add action, player, and we want to simulate their movement to the left. Something similar for the up button. We want to simulate a jump. Add event. Condition is touch, is touching object. The object that we're concerned with, the up control. If someone is touching this control, then we want to simulate the player jumping. Once again, a platform action. So these three events are going to respond when someone touches our touch controls. If someone touches right, we simulate them going right. If they touch the left button, we simulate them going left. And then if they press the up button, we simulate the player jumping. We're going to go ahead and take these events, move them where they belong, which is right inside the player is active event. We only want the player to be moved if the player is in active state. So now we can move our player with either a keyboard or with the touch of the screen. Now we need to deal with the mirroring. Right now, the left arrow of the keyboard mirrors the player. But if I'm not on a keyboard, that doesn't help me out very much. So we're going to select the keyboard on left arrow pressed event, and we're going to make that into an OR block. We're going to be adding a condition which will mirror the player when the left touch control is touched. Add another condition. Choose touch. And is touching object our left touch control. Done. So now we will mirror the player on the keyboard's left arrow press or someone touching the touch left touch control. Let's do the same thing for the not mirrored, which normally happens on the right arrow. Make an OR block, and let's add another condition. Touch is touching object touch right touch control. Done. The same thing goes for this next event block. This is the event block that deals with setting the animation. If someone's trying to control the player with the keyboard, we set the animation to walk. Well, we need something similar for our touch controls. Let's add another condition. Touch is touching object touch left. Done. One more. Touch is touching object touch right. Done. So now the alien will have its walk animation play if the user of the game is either pressing the left or right arrows of the keyboard or touching the left or right touch control. At this point, whether you're on a keyboard or touching the screen, you should be able to control the player equally. Let's test that that's the case. Let's go to Get Ready and run the layout. I want you to use your mouse to simulate testing touch controls. I want to see whether my controls work. If I click on the left arrow, it takes me left. I also see the mirroring. The right arrow works. And if I press the up touch control, it makes me jump. So this is exactly what we want. Animations are working, mirroring is working, and the touch controls and device detection are solid. Let's go back to Construct 2, however. What if I take Use Mouse Input off and I set it to no? That means treat the mouse like a mouse click. Don't treat it like touch. If I were to perform the same steps as before now, I'm not going to see the touch controls. I'm going to click with my mouse, and as you can see, I don't have any controls. Before you publish your game, you want to make sure that this Use Mouse Input is set to no. Anytime you want to test the touch controls, set it to yes. And don't forget to save your game, Control S or File Save.